Jordan, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm coming to you from the Thinking Tree. It's a heritage tree. It's so old, and I thought this would be the best place for me to do my debut video. I'm the author of Tales of a Former Drunk on Facebook, and I've struggled long and hard with whether to share my story or not. So if I get a little emotional, you'll know why. I feel like it's important to say that this is my journey and my journey only, and my experience, strength, and hope uh, in recovery. So I currently have 7 years sober. My sobriety date is May 21st, 2011. I come from a long line of drinkers, Irish alcoholics, uncles, father, grandfather, and that's how I was raised. I was raised around alcohol. It was a normal thing. Most of my family were construction workers that drank beer. So all my life I thought that you could only be an alcoholic if you drank beer and were in construction. And I was enamored from an early age with Hollywood. I wanted to be a movie star, and I thought that that's where the fancy people lived, and that's where my family lived. No one could convince me that that was not my family and that was not my destiny. So I aspired to grow up and go to Hollywood and find my real family. One of the earliest memories I have is being in the back of a car and waking up really, really cold. It was dark out, and I look out the window and I see a neon bar sign flashing. My sister was asleep beside me, and I must have been about 4 years old. And I guess as 4 year olds do, they talk. And my mom had been working nights, and my dad had been taking us out to the bar, leaving us in the car. So as soon as she got word of that, that was her last um, night job. She put it into that. I also like to say that I was raised in a pool hall, but my mother always says, "Why do you tell people that?" And I don't know, because my dad used to take us on errands, and we would go into a pool hall, and he would sit at the bar and he would drink, and my sister and I would play pool all day and drink soda and peanuts. And the only rule was if a gentleman came to the table, we were to give up the table. Otherwise, we could play all day. And because of this, my sister and I are amazing pool players. So, my dad liked to take off and leave his family for months at a time. And when he did that, my sisters and my mom and I would move in with my grandparents. And when my dad decided to get sober and come home, my grandpa would present him with a bill. And he would say, "This is what it's cost me to take care of your family while you were gone. You will pay me back every penny." So there was that. Um, I started suffering from depression early on. I started struggling with my sexuality when I was about 11. So I didn't know really how to deal with that. I was very confused, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. So I just hid it. And I had my first drink when I was 14 with an older friend of mine. Her idea was to go walk up to the liquor store, buy a pack of cigarettes, but first she thought she'd make us a mixed drink first. So here we are walking down the street with a mixed drink, 7 and 7 in one hand, and a cigarette in the other. And I thought, I have arrived. This is the greatest stuff ever. Hollywood, here I come. So I took a drink and I sputtered and I coughed, but that didn't stop me from slugging the rest of it. And I continued drinking all through high school. My friends didn't drink, but I was always the one Who would bring the bottle or who would get the booze, whatever we were doing. And I was always the one drinking to the very end. Married a man I didn't love and proceeded to have 4 children with him. He was a nice guy. He didn't drink and he didn't beat me, and those were my only requirements. But I didn't love him. And I think that my disease of alcoholism really would have taken off had I not always had children. Baby on the boob, baby on the hip. So my dad died when I was 17, and my mom remarried this wonderful, wonderful man who became the only grandpa that my kids knew. And he died, unfortunately, in 2008. So that devastated me, absolutely devastated me. And my marriage was in trouble. My stepdad had died, and I fell in love with a woman. So all of those things by themselves, I think, would have put a strain on a marriage. But all of them together, our marriage didn't stand a chance. And I used it as an excuse. That was my get out of jail card. You know, I'm out. And I had no job, losing the house, losing the car, losing the job, and I found myself with nowhere to be at 9 o'clock in the morning in the middle of the week. Here I am with 4 children, ages 2 to 12. So I did what every alcoholic does when they're down and out, or when they want to celebrate, or just because it was Monday. I poured myself a drink, and I remember toasting myself and saying, "Congratulations, Jordan. You are truly your father's daughter. You are becoming a drunk." And you would have think that that would have been enough to stop me, but it wasn't. I ended up getting a divorce and dragging my kids through hell. I got into a violent relationship. I drove drunk. I sold alcohol. I crawled inside dumpsters to sleep. Um, my life was horrible. It was unmanageable. It was wrought with depression and agony and despair. And I hated myself. Absolutely hated myself. And was so ashamed. I isolated my friends. I isolated my family. And my world became so incredibly small. So it was only a matter of time before CPS decided, hey, we better go and check this out. We're getting multiple calls. The lady's driving drunk. She's cutting herself. And I wanted to kill myself. But I didn't want to leave my children without a mother. You know, I knew what it was like to have a good mother. And I tried so very hard to be a good mother. And I tried so very hard to quit drinking. Every time I would try to quit drinking, I would end up in the hospital almost near death's door. So I started cutting my arms up and slicing them. I had these big angry welts all up and down my arms, and CPS people, they would come and they would search for the booze and make sure we had food in the house, and they could never find booze, and they could never catch me drunk. Because don't you know, a good alcoholic keeps their booze in the dryer. So they left me some brochures, and I was just desperate for a solution to feel better. Couldn't imagine my life without alcohol, and I couldn't imagine my life with alcohol, and I was at a crossroads. And they said, we think you need help. And my response was, I'm not leaving my 2 children. I'm not going into rehab. And they said, you don't have to. We're going to leave these brochures here for you. Here's the answer. Here's some help. So the person I was living with at the time decided they knew a place where we could go. So he took me, and I brought my 2 youngest children. And I didn't want any part of these people and what they have. But I knew that I needed to get sober, and I knew if I stood a chance, these people were the answer. And they wanted to hug me, and I was having no part of the hugging. You see over there? and I'll be over here. There'll be no hugging. This is my area. No hugging. So they kind of figured that out about me, and they decided that they would be nice to my children. Sodas, candy, coloring books, all of that stuff. And gradually, I started listening. Started listening to what the people had to say. And a little by little, I softened up. And I met some women friends. And I stumbled here and there, but I remained sober. I'd have 2 days, then I'd have 12 days, then I'd have 3 days. It took me a good year to put any sobriety together. Um, so my drinking career pretty much was 3 years long, from 2008 to 2011. And gradually, my life started changing, and things got better. I got out of the relationship, and my children learned to depend on me. My older boys, I made my amends to them, and they knew that they could depend on me for anything. And my two younger children have no memory of me being a drunk, no memory of me leaving them at McDonald's so I could go steal alcohol. They have no memory of that, and for that I'm thankful. Um, so I just kept going to these meetings, and I got a mentor to help me uh, remain sober, and I worked the recovery steps, and I met some women friends, and gradually, little by little, I started letting the people hug me. Still not one of my favorite things to do, but I'm so ever so grateful that I was able to find this life of sobriety and find these people and get a higher power of my understanding. So if you are struggling with addiction or depression, I urge you to reach out and talk to people. And I hope that my story has helped you in some way. And thank you for listening. My name is Jordan, and I'm an alcoholic.